Alright guys, in this video I'm going to be first talking about list and then later on about tuple, and I'm going to explain the difference between them as well. Okay, now list is basically the collection of items of different data types, and unlike dictionary where we ourselves assign keys to elements, in list Python itself assigns keys to elements, and these keys are basically index number. Now list, just like dictionary, is mutable, means that once we create a list we can delete items, update them, or add new records later on. So let's say that I will create a variable and I will name this variable as a, and I will put it equal to these two square brackets, and these square brackets tells Python that alright, I'm going to create a list. So previously we were using these flower brackets which were telling Python that I'm going to create a dictionary, but now these square brackets are telling Python that I'm going to create a list. And now we can insert items in a list without specifying its key value. So let's say that items in a list are apple, banana, and grapes. And now let me insert one last element, cherry. Alright, so now we have 4 items in a list, and now I will create another list and I will insert some integer values like 1, 2, 3, and 4, and another list, and I will insert both string and integer values inside it. So let's say it is apple, banana, and 6 and 9. Alright, now I can print out this whole list first of all simply by just specifying its name right here. So if I now just run it, you can see all the items that we have in the list A. And now similarly, if I just print this the list B and run it, you can see this whole list on the console screen. And then similarly, I can print out the list C as well and run it. You can see all these items right here on the console screen. Alright, now items in a list can be accessed by their index number. So the keys are basically their index number. So previously we were creating keys ourselves, but now as I told you that in list Python itself take care of keys and assigned all these values a keys, and these keys are basically index number. And now index number in Python and many programming language, at least that I know, always start from 0. So means that this apple is at index number 0, this banana is at index number 1, this grapes is at index number 2, cherry is at index number 3. And now let's say that I want to access this item grapes. So in here I need to specify the index number of this item's grapes. So this grapes is at index number 2 because index number in Python always start from 0. So first of all I will specify the name of the list from which I want to access the item. And now in here I need to specify its index number, which is 2. So right in here I will type 2. And now if I just run it, I should be able to see grapes on the console screen. And now let's say that you have lots of elements in a list and you want to access the last element in that list. So you can start counting from 0 from start to the end and just specify the last index of that item. But if you have so many elements in a list, then start counting from 0 will be a long process. So for this you can just simply type -1, which basically corresponds to the last element in a list. So the last element we have in this list is cherry, so I should be able to see cherry on the console screen. And here it is, cherry on the console screen. And then similarly, in order to access the second last element, you can just simply specify here -2 and run it. And you can see that grapes, here we have grapes on the console screen. Alright, now as I told you that list is mutable, means that we can delete items, update them, or add some new records in a list. So let's say that I want to update this grapes to something else. So for this, first of all, I need to specify the name of the list, and then I need to specify the index number of that item that I want to update. So this grapes is at index number 2. So right here just type 2 and now put it equal to any value that you want. So let's say that I want to update this grapes to mango. So just type here mango. And now if I just print this whole list, so just type print A and run it. And now instead of grapes, it should be mango. And here it is. Now similarly, we can insert items at any index number I want. So let's say that I want to insert a new item at index number 0 in this list A. So for this, we will use a built-in method known as insert. So in here, just type a dot insert, and then first of all you need to specify the index number where you want to insert the value. So I want to insert a value at index number 0, and now what value do I want to insert? So let's say that I want to insert watermelon in this list A, and now here we have a little trick. So since we have inserted a new record in this list A at index number 0, so now this apple, which was previously at index number 0, and now since we have inserted a new record in index number 0, which is watermelon, so now this apple will be at index number 1, this banana will be at index number 2, and then 3 and 4. Alright, and now if I just print on this whole list, just type print A and run it, you can see that now we have watermelon at index number 0 instead of apple, because we have inserted watermelon at index number 0, and now this apple will be at index number 1 right here. Now similarly we can remove items from this list as well using the built-in method remove. So in here just type a dot remove, it is remove, and now instead of specifying the index number of that item that I want to remove, I can directly specify the name of that element. So let's say that I want to remove this element banana from this list. So just type here banana, and now if I just print this whole list and run it, you can now see that banana is now no more in this list. Now exactly in the same way, just like dictionary, we can delete items from the list as well using the exact same method that we used in dictionary. Now let's say that you want to reverse all these items in this list. So for this we use a built-in method known as reverse. So in here just type a dot reverse and now print this whole item, and now what it will do is that it will put this cherry at index number 0, this grapes at index number 1, and so on. So now just run it. Alright, so now you can see that this cherry, which was previously at the last index, is now at the first index or index number 0. This grapes will be at index number 1, and so on. Alright, and now if I just try to print out the first item in a list, so in here if I just type print a and 0, and now if I just run it, now you can see that we have cherry on the console screen instead of apple, because we have reversed the order of all the items in this list. Alright, so this is how we can update, insert, and remove items in a list. Now let me teach you about tuples in this video as well. So now we create tuple using these round brackets instead of square brackets, and these round brackets tells Python that I'm going to create a tuple. Alright, now the difference between tuple and list is that tuples are immutable, means that once we create a tuple, we cannot further update, delete, or insert some new items. So now let's say that I want to update this item banana to something else. So in here if I just type a and then the index number of that item, which is banana, and then this banana is at index number 1. So now let's say that I want to update it to something else like mango, and now if I just try to print out this whole tuple and run it, I will get an error, and it is saying that tuple object does not support item assignment, because as I told you that tuples is immutable, means that we cannot update, delete, or insert some new item once we create a tuple. Now similarly we can access items in a tuple using their index number, just like we did right here. And then similarly if you want to print out this whole tuple, just simply specify the name of this whole tuple. First of all just get rid of this line of code, and now just run it. And now you can see we have every items in a tuple printed out on the console screen. So let me just repeat one last time the difference between tuple and a list. So list mutable means that we can delete items, update them, or add some new records. But tuples are immutables, means that once we create a tuple, we cannot delete items, update them, or add some new record later on. So that was the difference between list and tuple. So I hope that you liked this video. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me through email, and I will definitely get back to you as soon as I can. Up till next video, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Alright guys, in this video I'm gonna teach you a very basic Python concept known as functions. Now functions are like small modular chunks which help us to split our program into small pieces, and each piece is assigned a very specific task. So far, if you're directly taking this section, our programs were so small that we do not even need to break them into small pieces or chunks, but as our program grows bigger and bigger, then we need to divide it in small pieces, which will help us to make our code more organized, neat and manageable. Another advantage of functions are that we can use the same function again and again, and it helps us to avoid repetition and make our code reusable. Like for example, if you are making a calculator app in Python which can perform 4 operation, let's say multiplication, division, addition and subtraction, then it will be a lot better to have 4 functions for that. Alright, now I'm going to have a very simple example of functions so that you can understand it, and then later on I will cover another example in this video as well. So now in order to create a function, first of all type the keyword def, which basically tells Python that alright, I'm going to create a function, and after that keyword I will name my function. So you can name your function anything you want, but I'm going to name my function as singer, and now put these 2 round brackets. And now inside this round bracket I can pass some additional piece of information to this function, but I will move on to cover this thing later on in this video. But for now put this colon, and this colon indicate the start of this function. Alright, now inside the body of this function I can do anything that I want this function to do. So let's say that I want this function to print out the name of my favorite singer, which is Taylor Swift. So I can type the name of my favorite singer is Taylor Swift. Alright, so now I have a function singer, and this function is basically printing out this thing on the console screen. Well, I can have anything in this function, but just for simplicity, I'm just printing out this thing on the console screen. So now if I just run this code, you can see that I have nothing on the console screen, and this is because I have created this function but I haven't called this function. So any function that you create in Python, you must call them so that it can execute whatever is inside it. Now in order to call it, I will just call this function outside the body of this, outside this function. So in order to call it, just type the name of that function that you want to call. In this case it is singer, and put these 2 round brackets, and these 2 round brackets are basically for passing some additional piece of information to this function singer. Well, again I will move on to cover this later on in this video, but now if I just run this code, and this time you can see that I have this thing on the console screen. So now let me just explain one last time what I have done so far. So I have created a function singer, and then I'm passing no additional piece of information in that function, and I'm just telling that function to print this thing on the console screen, and then I must call that function singer so that it can execute whatever this function singer has inside it. So this function has only this thing inside it, so it will print out this thing on the console screen. Alright, now let's have another example of function as well. So let's say that I have a calculator app, and that calculator app just perform 2 things. The first thing it perform is addition, so I will create a separate function for addition, and now inside that function I will have 2 variables, let's say a and then b, and then it will print out the sum of these 2 numbers, which is a plus b. Alright, and now if I just call this function and execute it, you can see that I have 5 printed out on the console screen. Alright, now what we can do is that I can call this function as many times as I want. So let's say that I call it again, or let's say I call it again once again. So now if I just run it, you can see that I can see 5, the result 3 times, because I have called this function 3 times. You can call this function as many times as you want, and this is how we can use a code again and again once we create it. Alright, now let's say that I have another function as well, and I will name this function as subtraction, and it takes no arguments or parameters, and that function will subtract 3 from 2, so b equal to 2, and it will print out a minus b. Alright, and now if I just run this code, well, just call this function subtraction. Alright, and now if I just run this code, you can see that the sum function prints the sum of these two numbers a and b, while the subtract function subtract 3 from 2. Alright, and now let's say that instead of defining these variables a and b inside that function, I want to pass both of these functions once I call them. So let me just get rid of these two variables from here. And now what I will do is that I will basically pass both of these numbers to this function instead of defining it inside that function, because the job of these functions is basically to add and subtract these numbers, not to define variables in that. So what I will do is that I will create two variables outside the body of these functions, and the first variable will be 2, a equal to 3, and then the second variable b will be equal to 2. Alright, now what I will do is that I will pass these two variables a and b in this function addition and subtraction. So we can pass these variables a and b right here. So since I want to pass two variables to the addition function, so I will type a, and then for the second variable I will type comma and then b. And then similar is the case with a subtraction function as well. So right here just type a comma b. Alright, now since I have passed on these values a and b, variables a and b, now it will be received right here inside this round brackets as an argument. So the first value or variable a will be received, let's say, in this variable a. Well, you can name these variables anything you want, but I'm naming it as a and b. And then the second variable b will be received inside another variable, and let's call this variable as b. And then similar is the case for subtraction as well. All right, and now if I just execute this code, you can see the same result on the console screen. So this is how we can define function, and this is how we can pass some additional pieces of information in that function. Well, you can pass some string value in that function as well. So let me just create another function, and let's call this function as singer. And now in here I will type print. Well, let's say that this function will receive a variable, and let's call this variable as sing, and it will print out that passed value that I will pass in this function singer. And now let's call this function singer, and now in here I will pass the name of my favorite singer, Taylor Swift. Alright, now I have called this function and I have passed some additional piece of information in that function, which will be received in this variable sing, and then I'm printing out whatever I have passed in that function, which will be received in this variable singer as an argument. Alright, and now if I just run it, you can see Taylor Swift on the console screen. So yeah, this is how we can pass values to a function, and this is how we can create functions in Python. Well, we will create a lot of functions in this section as well. So for the next video, I will teach you what basically default arguments are, and then how can we basically return something from a function. So this is what we're going to be learning in the next video. So I hope that you like this video, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact me through email, and I will definitely get back to you as soon as I can. Up till next video, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Hey guys, in this video I'm going to teach you about default argument values in Python. So let's say that I will have a function known as singer, and then the singer function will expect some additional piece of information which will be received in this variable sing. And now let's say that this function will print out that additional piece of information right here. And now let's say that I will call this function singer without passing any additional piece of information, while this function singer is expecting some additional piece of information which should be received in this variable sing. But what if I just try to execute this function singer without passing any additional piece of information? So now if I just run this function, you can see that it is giving me an error because it is saying that you should pass some additional piece of information in this function singer, which should be received in this variable sing. But what if I just put this value sing, this variable sing equal to Taylor, and this basically means that the default value of this variable sing will be Taylor, and this will only take effect if I just don't pass anything or any additional piece of information which should have been received in this variable sing. So if I just don't pass anything, in this function singer, then put the default value of sing equal to Taylor. And now if I just execute this code once again, and now you can see that I have Taylor on the console screen. But what if I just pass some additional piece of information in that function singer, and let's say that I pass the name of my second favorite singer known as Katy Perry. Alright, and now if I just run it, and now you can see that instead of the default value of Taylor, it prints out Katy Perry on the console screen, because this will only take effect only if I just don't pass anything in that function singer. So the default value of this variable is sing, but if I just pass something in this variable sing, then that thing will be executed instead of this default value of Taylor. This is what default argument values are. So I hope that you like this video, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact me through email and I will definitely get back to you as soon as I can. Up till next video, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Hello guys, in this video I'm going to teach you how can we return something from a function. So let's say that I have this function calculator, and then this calculator function will take two arguments a and b, and now I'm going to create a variable which will basically store the sum of these two numbers a and b. And now instead of printing out the result inside this function, what I will do is that I will return that result c from where I will call this function. So now I will call this function outside the body of that function. So it is calculator, and then for the arguments I will pass 4 and 2. And now since I have called this function from here, so now whatever I will return from here will be received right here. And now since I'm returning a variable, a single result from here, so I need one single variable so that I can store that result. So right here I will create a variable sum, and now this result that I have written from this function will now be stored in this variable sum from where I have called this function. So now let's print out sum on the console screen and run this code, and now you can see that I have 6 on the console screen. Now we can return multiple things from a function as well. So let's say that I will have another variable which will basically subtract a from b. Alright, and now I will return both c and d from this function calculator. Alright, and now I'm returning basically two things, c and d. So in here I need two variables. So let's say that the first one will be sum, and then the second one will be subtract. And now first of all I will print this variable sum, and then I will print out this variable subtract. And now if I just run it, so the sum is 6, and then the subtraction result is 2. Alright, so this is how we can return a single and multiple things from a function. Well, we can return some strings from a function as well. So again, let me just simply create a function known as singer, and then it will return this variable, and then it will receive this variable sing. And now in here, well, let's say that it will receive nothing in here, and it will just simply return the name of my favorite singer, Taylor. Alright, and now let's call this function singer, and now since it is returning this string Taylor, so it will be received in some variable, and let's call this variable as sing. Alright, and now let's print out this variable sing. So just type print sing and run it, and you can see Taylor on the console screen. Well, what you can do is that you can just simply type print whatever is returned by this function singer. So whatever is returned by whatever this function singer will return, I'm just printing out this thing on the console screen. So first of all, it will call this function singer, and then it will see what this function is returning. So whatever will be returned will be printed out on the console screen. So now if I just run it again, you will see the same output on the console screen. Alright, so this is how we can return some string value from a function as well. So yeah, that is it for this video. I hope that you liked it. And in the next video, we will do something else. So up till next video, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time.